Welcome to the CG Pro podcast. This is episode 72, and today we have with us Casey Pike, who is a lead visualization supervisor at Halon. He's worked on some really cool movies, lots of Planet of the Apes stuff, and we'll get into that in a second. If you've enjoyed what you watch or hear today, please follow us at becomecgpro.com if you'd like to find out more about what we do as a school or in our free Facebook group. But yeah, it's a great pleasure to have you with us here today, Casey. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet. Go ahead.
No, it's cool to be on here with you guys and talk about VFX and visualization and all that good stuff.
Yeah, computer graphics.
Indeed.
It's a big love of mine too. Cool. Well, love to hear a little bit about how you got into all of this in the first place. I know you spent a lot of time in visualization. Were there any kind of things that happened early in your life that made you realize that you wanted to do this? Was it maybe a movie you saw, or did you stumble into it? How did you get going?
It was definitely kind of a combo of both of those. Yeah. So early on when I was in I remember being in 5th grade and having like a real kind of sit down moment with my mom where I had to tell her that instead of being a brain surgeon, I wanted to make movies. And so
what was her face like when you said that?
I don't know, probably relief.
Less expensive maybe.
Yeah. And it was really just like my passion for movies started off super early in elementary school. I was writing scripts for horror movies and stuff, and it really was like I feel like it was probably Lord of the Rings when that came out. I think that is when my brain kind of switched and I was like, I think I need to go into visual effects instead of movie making in general. And like the prequel trilogy, was coming out at the same time, and The Matrix and all of that stuff was just so inspiring. And that was kind of right around that time. And so my friends and I would, in middle school and high school, just make, goofy videos, on our weekends and over the summers, mostly like campy horror movies and stuff that were like 8 or 10 minutes long. But then eventually I think it was between 8th and 9th grade, we made a Mortal Kombat spoof that was an hour and 20 minutes long that it took us like 7 months to make, and all of our friends were involved, and we built sets and costumes and all this stuff. And pretty goofy to watch at the moment, but I feel like that was like around that time was definitely when I wanted to make movies. But visualization in particular, like I started off in college getting a VFX job at a small VFX studio in Oregon, and worked there while going to school. And then when kind of work dried up there, I started looking for VFX jobs down in LA, which I'd kind of, sworn off. I was like, I'm not moving to LA. I'm an Oregonian. And, but then we came down for a couple film festivals, and it was beautiful and nothing like all of the, 80s and 90s movies that I had in my head, like Demolition Man. That was my picture of LA. And so when we started looking for VFX jobs, we started talking to some people doing previz. And I definitely thought of previz as kind of like, I don't know, like lesser visual effects, like the visual effects that just don't look very good. And so it was not my goal to get into viz. But just trying to find a job, I found one at Halon. And after like a month or something of doing it, again, it was like this kind of like viewpoint switch where like I'd chosen visual effects because I loved the realization of like fantasy and imagination on screen that, from like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and all these great movies, like that is what I wanted to make. But I needed like a place to fit into the, to the industry, and visual effects was like the thing that I wanted to do. But one of the things that I kind of learned as I moved into visual effects is that I was going to be a visual effects artist and not like the director, but in visualization, you're not the director, but you're like a filmmaker, and you get to like wear both hats. You get to use all the programs and do 3D animation and all the cool stuff about visual effects, but you are wearing a separate hat that's like, instead of like making this, this one shot at a time look the best it can be, it's like, well, I need to figure out in a similar amount of time how to make like 20 shots and have that tell a story, and then show it to the director and have them give feedback. Is that the story they want to tell? Is that the way they want to tell it? And that process and being kind of early in production was really kind of creatively fulfilling. And so it was pretty quick that after starting a viz job that I was like, I think this is where I want to be, because I want to kind of be in that like kind of filmmaker seat. And one of the nice things about it is that you get to like do the computer animation, you get to set up these cool looking shots, and then once it's kind of like, oh yeah, that blocking and everything works, then you move on to the next shot, and you don't have to worry about like making sure everything reads perfectly well or that it's like photoreal or whatnot. It's kind of like, as long as you're telling the story. And yeah, so it's always I don't know, it's a cool niche for sure.
Right, yeah, you're closer to the story, the creative, but further from the final pixels or the
Yeah,
final image.
right. And that's one of the things that's like kind of a cool experience when you're watching a movie you've worked on like in the theater, is that you don't actually see any of your work on screen ever. There's like never a point where you're like, oh yeah, I actually made that, but you see your camera move or like the scene blocking, or like you see all of this stuff that you were involved in early on, when the rest of production, all the actors and everything and all the VFX artists that touch it afterward have just made so much better. And so it's kind of it's like a deja vu of something that you're looking at and you're like, well, I kind of made that, but like hundreds of other people were also making that at this, after I was involved.
And I'd imagine that it's also evolved a bit since you've started doing it, because the technology that what what I know of previous, having worked in it some myself, that you're not aiming for the final look. It takes too much time to do that. You want to get through it quick and get through your shots. But also previously, because we wanted to work in faster or real time, there was limits because of the technology. But now some of those limits are being broken through. What's the evolution that you've seen in visualization in terms of the kind of visual quality that you aim for or that you can make?
Yeah. Well, yeah, so Halon started using Unreal Engine to render previz in 2015 with War for the Planet of the Apes. And I was on that team, and it really was like there was this kind of moment where like, we were trying to figure out whether we should adopt a real-time engine. And there were kind of, I don't know if it's fair to say that there were two camps, but at least for me, there was kind of, I was of two minds. One was, we're doing fine with, using Maya and doing play blasts. And we had all of these tricks to get effects and lighting and stuff and workarounds that, took, kind of took years to build up confidence to be able to get like great looking stuff out of Maya. And so there was this kind of moment of, do we really even need like real-time engines? Is it going to give us that much? And as we got into it and, our renders started coming out, it was like, oh, it looks so good. It looks so much better. And a lot of that is the lighting and the presence of motion blur, and that you can do a lot of things that are a lot more complex. And that's like 2015 Unreal. But as we've moved forward in the like 9 years since, we've utilized its real-time engine capabilities a lot more than back then, where we were using it basically strictly as a lighting and renderer, where we would kind of port our Maya scenes into Unreal, we would light them, and we would render them. Back then, we weren't using like version control systems like Perforce in Unreal. It was like every single shot had an entire copy of the entire environment, built into it. And we weren't doing virtual camera in Unreal. We weren't capturing mocap in Unreal. Like, it was very strictly a renderer. But since then, we've kind of used it in a lot of different ways. Some of the things we mentioned, like on Pinocchio, the Robert Zemeckis Pinocchio, we set up master scenes in both Maya and in Unreal, and attached his camera to camera rig rails and other curves and stuff so that he could film with a VCam the entire movie before they went into shoot. And like with you could do that with like a Maya or a motion blur or motion builder workflow, but Unreal, you get all the lighting in real time. You can adjust the lighting in real time. You can make other adjustments in real time, and you can render fast. That's a big part of Unreal, is that like to get I do remember working on shots in Maya with putting all sorts of effort into the effects and everything, and then hitting play blast and hoping that in 2 hours it doesn't crash or something, so you get your shot out. But in Unreal, it's like 30 seconds, and you can take a look at it and see if it worked. And just hitting play usually gives you a sense of exactly what it's going to look like when it gets rendered anyway. And then virtual production workflows of like moving building sets, doing previz in those sets, and then taking that previz and putting it on LED walls or other kinds of volumes to get interactive lighting on actors. All of that stuff is possible because we use a real-time rendering engine. Oh, I can't hear you.
That was my fault. I was on mute on a live broadcast. Naughty me. Is there a point where you're developing this work to iterate quickly and make scenes quickly, to make decisions quickly, and work with the director and the core creative team as closely as possible? Is there, with the advances in the tech that you're describing, and the fact that now we can, if we want to, make almost or sometimes photoreal worlds that run in real time that you could previz into, I'd imagine that there must be some discussion, and I'm interested at what point do you decide to stop making it prettier, because it must be kind of tempting to just keep going. And I'd imagine also some productions you would have, well, this one is designed to be done in previz, and then we're going to send all of this stuff on and they're going to make it prettier, but maybe you guys aren't. But is every project different, or is there sort of an agreed stop making it prettier kind of moment?
No, I think it all comes down to the the creatives that you're working with. I think that some people just say like, oh, we don't need Unreal, without knowing that like it's actually faster to render and there's a lot more freedom. You can make adjustments to the animation of the camera these days that you couldn't do it in the past. So there's a lot of like kind of speed benefits you get out of using Unreal apart from the image. But then some directors want it to look as pretty as possible, and so they give notes like, oh, it'd be cool if the light, like the rim light, if you could just move that over here. So it's a huge range, and I feel like it's based on the creatives that are involved and how kind of involved they want to be in the visualization process, and how much kind of effort they want to put into the look of it. But then a lot of it comes down to schedule. You kind of get away with what you can, because we want to make it look as great as possible. But sometimes it's like, oh well, we got to get the cutout tomorrow. do these, you have a bunch of shots still left or notes to address, and and that one shot where you're like, oh, I could have done the lighting a little bit better. Yeah, you just have to let it go. And that's kind of one of the things that I was saying earlier about previz that's kind of nice, is that the that you can kind of back away from like the perfectionism. You can be like, yeah, like it tells the story, everybody gets it, and it looks great, but it doesn't look exactly like, it doesn't look perfect. Just ship it. And yeah, so and the I guess the types of visualization that we do also vary from project to project. Sometimes people are very interested in just like, can we fit a camera into this car that we're shooting? And can we get like, we storyboarded it or something, and we want to make sure that we can actually get these angles, and then we just like do like a tech viz pass where we put all the cameras in, give them renders, and then give them like a little top-down layout of, here's the camera body inside the car, it fits, this one's good to go, or this one doesn't fit, here's a shot that is kind of similar that can fit in the car. And so all of it requires framing the shots, but depending on how much, like, kind of what they're looking for, you end up giving them kind of different, I guess, deliverables, which is previz, tech viz, and then I guess there's pitch viz, which is basically previz but for getting like movies greenlit, so that they can present it to the studio, get everybody excited, get everybody kind of sharing kind of the vision for what kind of movie they're going to make. And those ones, I think, are the ones where we ultimately spend most, or the most time on making it look really nice.
Yeah. It's just, you're in a sales moment there with
exactly. And I think that there's sometimes moments like that in previz where there's a sequence that the director like really wants to nail, so that they can
right,
show it to the people they need to show it to, and then whereas the other sequences is like, oh yeah, well, we got to figure out like the action blocking, but it doesn't need to really sing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they're still selling, essentially. They're just
not
selling the idea at all, like the can we do this thing in the first place, but they're still selling an idea to a group of people and trying to get people's buy-in on that method.
Yeah.
What do you guys spend most of your time doing? Is it more in the previz bucket?
I think it's mostly in the previz bucket, but we do Postviz as well, and actually Halon as a whole over the past 4 years has really grown so that like half of our company or more actually does video game cinematics and commercials, and so Halon has kind of branched out and is doing a lot of cool work in that sphere. But when it comes to visualization, it kind of feels like most of the time we're prevising, but on movies, the amount of postviz that you can end up doing is often way more than you prevised. So, for example, on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, we did pitch viz, previz, tech, and post for that, and we did like 3 or 4 sequences in previz for the movie, but we did like 23 sequences for postviz, and so including the ones that we'd prevised. And so I feel like the postviz, like basically if you're on a big movie and they need a lot of postviz and we end up being one of the vendors, you usually end up doing a lot. And there's some movies that you do just a little. I think we worked on the Hunger Game Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, and we prevised 2 sequences and postvized those 2 sequences plus 1. And so it wasn't like the whole movie, but a movie like Apes just had so much need for VFX, in the
Things with a
editorial.
lot of made up stuff in
Yeah.
more previous. Can you explain to our audience what Postviz is? Because I know what it is, but I think probably some of them don't. Like, imagine you're explaining it to somebody's grandma or something.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So Postviz is, they've shot the movie, so they have all the plates with all the green screen or just empty back plates or whatnot. And before it goes to VFX, and the VFX, like oftentimes or most of the time, we're working with our VFX supervisor, as well as the director, on our Postviz process. And what it is basically kind of like a temp VFX shot that gets put into the edit, so that as the editors are cutting the movie together, they can kind of find, like, make sure that everything's working. Like, we have a set extension in the background, it's cutting well with this other, this set extension looking from the B camera. Or there's a monster running through frame. How big is the monster? How close do we need to put it to the camera? And does this plate work for it? No, it doesn't. Let's try a new plate. And it's a lot. It's very much akin to a VFX workflow, but it's just a lot faster and a lot dirtier. And so
By VFX, you're also
digital
explaining
VFX,
basically composited live action and CG, as opposed to some people think of VFX, they think of particles
like all
flying
CG.
around.
Oh yeah. So like it would be keying out blue screens, rotoing out actors, putting in set extensions, putting in digital characters, putting in, like if there's an explosion, putting in that explosion, but it's not going to be the explosion that you see in the movie. It's going to be an explosion that's there so that when everybody's watching the cut, they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's a big explosion. And so a lot of that, because the director and the VFX supervisor are involved, a lot of the shaping of that is in line with what it will eventually be, but we work at just a faster rate. So like, we're not worried about if you see a little bit of chatter on the key or if the roto is kind of soft. It's largely kind of getting all the story elements in there so that the editors have all of that stuff to look at when they're cutting the movie, and they can decide what scenes get cut before they start spending VFX money on it. And like, if there's even whole characters that might get cut during the editorial process, that they can make those decisions early, so that the VFX that they're doing is the stuff that's going to that they're confident is going to be in the movie. But also that VFX work, depending on what kind of work it is, you won't start seeing like kind of photoreal shots until very late in the game. And so Postviz are these like temp VFX shots that live in the edit. So when they're showing the studio, when they're doing, cast, or not cast and crew, but test audience screenings, early on to make sure things are working, those kinds of things will often be too early to like fill it all in with final VFX. And so the Postviz is kind of this temporary spot for all those VFX shots.
Right. So akin to what you might get in the end, rough around the edges, doesn't matter. And so sometimes Postviz shots will end up in test screenings.
Yeah.
That's
I think that less a lot less as they get further along in the production. But yeah, I've definitely I've never seen a test screening with any of our own work in it, but I've had coworkers who are like, oh yeah, I saw a test screening in LA somewhere, and saw some of our work sitting in the edit, and like and sometimes there's like a storyboard or two, and then it cuts to a previz shot, and then it cuts back to the actor running in front of a blue screen. But the idea with Postviz is to like reduce the amount of imagination it takes to like to get what you're watching.
Right, it's bridging the gap. And somebody from the audience was Shane, in fact, was asking. So this is more like post-production viz and or after viz. Like it's basically you visualized the CG components probably already, but you've done the shoot and now you're adding that back in crudely into
Yeah,
your CG.
it's very much so. Yeah, that. And sometimes you come onto a show and do post-viz only, so you never, like, they either didn't pre-visit or that like viz team isn't available or whatnot. But it is very much, yeah, it's like post-viz. But sometimes, like on apes, or especially like movies like big monster movies or whatever, where like there's lots of all CG shots, that you'll still be tooling with that, like basically doing previs, but even though the movie's already been shot.
Yep. Can you explain a little bit about the process? Or I know that it can show up in a few different ways, but is this something that's happening? Where is it happening? Is it on set or back in the facility or remotely these days? And what kinds of tools are used for post
Yeah.
viz?
Let's see. For Postviz, we use Maya, Unreal, and After Effects are like the main ones. And then I guess we use Synthesize for tracking, camera tracking. Uh, and then some people use Nuke and stuff, but like in general, we're using After Effects for us, and Photoshop. And then for like modeling and texturing and stuff, it's like Substance Painter and Photoshop and ZBrush, things like that. Let's see. And then as far as where we are, so yeah, pre-COVID, we were probably half the time at our Halon office, and then which is in Santa Monica, even though we're moving soon. And half the time we were like on lots or on office buildings, wherever their production was. So, which was, always a cool experience to be able to go to, the Fox lot, or the, I guess, 20th Century lot now, or Warner Brothers. And we, wherever they're kind of pre-production, usually with the art department, or in post-viz with the editorial department, wherever they were, we'd kind of set up either in that office or close by. And so that it would be easy to kind of interface with the director or the VFX supervisor. But these days, after COVID, it's all remote. I mean, like I go in to the office to shoot mocap, but other than that, it's basically at home. All the artists are at home, and we're all kind of much more spread out these days. We have artists in the UK that we're kind of working on each other's projects and stuff. And then there's just people kind of that spread out during COVID, but it doesn't really matter because we all kind of remote into our machines that all sit at the office, and are able to work like that, and it really has worked out great.
Do you still go on set for some of the post viz work?
Actually, with Postviz, it's usually not on set, because they're like, you often start Postviz either after they're finished shooting or like a couple weeks before they're finished shooting, where they've shot enough for editorial to start putting some scenes together, to send it to you, to be like, these are the shots we think we need. And so that, I think Postviz is like a lot. I don't know. I guess in pre-COVID, I feel like half the shows that I did Postviz on were, with edit, on the lot or at the office. And but we still do go to set. We have a virtual art department and they're actually kind of busy right now doing like commercials and live events and stuff. And so they will go to set, but the set is like a live broadcast LED wall kind of situation, or AR, all sorts of cool new ways to use the technology have popped up, in the last 10 years. And there's yeah, all sorts of cool like non Hollywood applications for all of these workflows.
That's interesting. Yeah, I imagine quite good probably at the moment with the state of the film industry being not quite what it was.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of waiting for that to pick back up again. But
Yep.
has that been something you've dug into more as a result of the film industry strikes?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it wasn't, wholly because of the strikes, but I think that certainly our efforts to branch out further, were spurned on by the strikes. But the video game aspect, which is, like I said, like half the company, is like we started that before COVID, but it was really in 2020 we partnered with Epic to make commercials and cinematic pieces for Fortnite. And since then, our Fortnite um, project has gone on for 4 years, and it started off. I don't know how many people it started off with, but now it's more than 50 people. I think it's a lot more than 50 people, and they are just a constantly working, and we feel like it was really fortunate that we got that established when the strikes started, because the strikes have hurt, but I feel like our having branched out really helped us out.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for everybody everywhere to be thinking about, whether it's an individual or a company, to be a little diversified to protect against things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's the work like on the cinematic side? Is that very different in terms of a workflow and staffing and artist skills to the visualization?
Yeah, it is. There's still kind of there's still a previs process in it, but they just call it layout. And layout is like, traditionally in animation studios is kind of the previs process. Um, but they're doing most of their layout work in Unreal. So they actually capture motion capture into Unreal, edit it and stitch it in Unreal, and do all their shot, laying out the shot work. All that happens in Unreal, and once that kind of gets a certain level of approval, then it switches over to production, where we have finals animators and finals lighters, finals effects artists, that work with the Epic team, on all these short pieces, so commercials and cinematics. And yeah, so that's kind of how Fortnite works. And then there's other video game and finals shows that we have going on. And one of the things we've been doing more recently are kind of these I haven't like practiced how to describe what they are because they're so recent, but they're
Invent a
like
term, I can tell.
yeah, but they're kind of like boardmatics, except like where you've drawn storyboards, but in After Effects you cut off their arms, just so that their hand is waving and that kind of thing, except that they're done with paintings, and they use Stable Diffusion and other AI programs to add depth to them, so they can kind of pass cameras through the paintings, and kind of doing this 2D. At least it appears 2D, but some shots are 3D, some shots are 2D, some shots are have AI workflows involved in them, and they're largely for pitch pieces, for video games or other IPs. And unfortunately we can't show any of them because they're all like really early stages for kind of the development stage for projects. But it's I don't know, but it's a cool new workflow that we're kind of testing out on some of those.
Well, seeing as you mentioned it, and you brought up one of my buzzwords for the bingo, AI,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
as it's called. Um, it sounds like it's entering your workflow a little bit, and whatever you're allowed to say or can.
Yeah.
Love to hear how it's affected things, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about
Mhm.
what AI is, what it's capable of, what it's not, and how it can be used. And obviously, people always go to well, not obviously, maybe, but people tend to go to the fear side first with AI
Indeed.
and
Yeah.
worry about jobs being taken away or
Yep.
this, that, and the other. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah. So we kind of had a period where we were experimenting and testing a lot of the AI tools that have been coming out. And certainly with AI, there are a lot of tools and a lot of tools coming out very fast, a lot of updates coming out very fast. And so we thought we needed to kind of actually do some exploration in that space to see if things can get like faster, like modeling or roto or you know or like even animation, and because there's all sorts of tools that come out and they have a lot of promises, or they have a really nice spiffy video, and everybody's like, oh my god, this is gonna replace my job because this one video. And so we had a couple of people just kind of testing out AI solutions for a long time, and it was not as I think for myself personally, not as scary as it seemed, because it was like, I think that, for example, AI rotoscoping, I think, was kind of a big one where it was kind of this moment where I was like, yeah, this probably will save time, maybe. Like it wasn't, but it wasn't like a silver bullet, because it would, like, it would grab somebody, like somebody would walk through frame and it would grab their figure, but as they walk through frame, it would grab the tree for a couple frames and grab this for a couple frames. And then to like paint those things out required another pass where it would grab different things. And ultimately we ended up kind of not falling back on, but adopting tools that were like um intuitive. So like, for example, After Effects' rotobrush was basically comparable, and it has neural network stuff built into it, and Adobe advertises some of the AI stuff that's going into that. And rotobrush, like 2 or 3 years ago, I would tell my artists, don't use rotobrush, just go into Mocha and make all your shapes and track your shapes, and like and do it manually, because rotobrush is not going to be very good. But these days, like, it's been a long time since I've jumped back into Mocha, because rotobrush actually is controllable enough to be useful. And so that's an area where like an AI based tool has gotten good enough to start using. And I think I think that maybe down the road there's a lot of other things that feel scary, that could become scary. But ultimately, like, that process that I just described is like, oh, this company came out with a cool tool that makes it easier for me to do the thing that is really frustrating and takes a lot of time, but did not replace my job. It just made it so that I could spend my time on other things, that so I don't have to spend a whole day rotoing. I can spend a couple hours rotoing. And ultimately, I suppose, if you stack up a lot of time saving things, you'll ultimately probably need less people to do the work. And I think that's where the scary part comes in. But I guess I'm not scared right now, because I feel like most of the AI solutions that I've seen either require an almost equal amount to get to work right, or get the actual thing that you want instead of something cool that you don't want. And ultimately, it just kind of makes me for more efficient tools in the few places that it's actually succeeded.
Right. Oh, it's really interesting to hear from a company such as Halon and yourself, and reality is what I'm really interested in. There's so much hype out there about AI that I love hearing stories more about reality, because we are where we are right now. And as you said, we'll be somewhere different in a few years' time. But it's really great to hear about where we are today. And the theory is that it could replace people, or it saves people time, therefore it frees them up to do other things, and maybe we can therefore push other things further than we could before, because we were held back by all these crusty manual processes we have.
Right. And I think that kind of speaks a little bit to like the like you adopting Unreal as a rendering engine back in the day, that it did speed some things up, but like but that I guess part of it is it kind of feels like for for the directors and VFX supervisors that want to make sure that they dial in the previs so that it's represent what they want from a like lighting, making it look really pretty, that that they're always like, oh, running out of time because they couldn't quite get the thing that they wanted before the deadline. And I feel like there's that kind of thing where like more efficient tools are going to make you have to do less work, but they also open the doorway to be able to make your work better in the same amount of time. And I guess on some productions, you might be like, oh, well, I can do it faster, so I'll like have less days on the project, which is a little bit of the fear about AI. But the other one is that you'll spend the same amount of time, but the thing that you deliver is just like, of a higher quality.
I guess we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
indeed.
But it's great, at least, because crystal balls, very few people have them as but we can talk about right now. We can talk about what's happening right now, and it's really helpful and hopeful as well, I think, for people to hear that, because I think there's a lot of, especially the new generation coming into this, there's a lot of curiosity about and maybe this leads into another question. There's a lot of curiosity about what to learn. When I got into visual effects, I went around to studios, I asked them what they used. They all used Maya, so I learned Maya and I got a job. It was a bit more complicated than that, but basically that was it. And today I think that same question exists, but there's more, I guess, uncertainty around what are those things that you should be learning. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that I'll speak specifically for visualization, people who are interested in going into visualization. Maya is definitely still useful. There's a lot of talk about like, oh, can we do all of this work in Unreal? And I guess for previs, you have to be so fast. Like it's all about speed. It's all about like kind of filling in those gaps, telling them that story in a very short amount of time. And so any process that you kind of introduce that slows that down is not super adoptable. And so over the years, Unreal has come out with features and capabilities that we've kind of kept moving further and further in that direction. But I personally don't think that we're there yet. But I do think that learning Unreal is, especially since the program itself for like, just an individual artist wanting to learn it is free. And so learning it, and there's, loads of videos on YouTube about how to do it. So yeah, I would suggest Unreal. Maya, I think, is still the staple of the VFX industry. And so, and I think that it's still the staple of visualization. And so I would heavily encourage people to learn Maya. Compositing, After Effects or Nuke, I think are still like, the compositors for us. And I guess I'm not completely aware of what other visualization houses use, but I have the general sense that After Effects is pretty common. And then for asset work, Substance Painter, especially, is a tool that I think is completely, well, I'm going to say like 95% replaced my Photoshop workflows that I used to do. When I'm texturing up a character or a hallway or something, there's like, oh, I'll find a dirt texture that's repeatable and put it on the ground to make it look like there's dirt on the ground. But in Substance Painter, you can just like import your model and you can paint dirt, but I'm going to paint a pathway through it, and then I'm going to paint some rocks over here, and have easily generate normal maps. So that one in my mind is something that, like, from a visualization perspective of wanting to get something that looks like good but not perfect but really quick, is something that is like you can throw a model, once you've laid out the UVs of your model, you can get it in there and you can texture it up in like 30 minutes, and it looks better than most visualization assets did a couple of years ago. With almost zero, comparatively zero time. Let's see. And then I think for visualization, one of the things that makes it a little bit different from VFX is the kind of filmmaking eye is, and maybe less VFX but more animation. People who are animators come from animation school. Most cameras are static. It's just a camera on a tripod and you're watching your scene play out in front of the camera. But a lot of what visualization is camera animation, being on the right side of the line or figuring out why you're crossing the line, which is like, if two characters are talking and you're on one side of their head, when you cut to the other side, they don't like switch spots. And it's kind of like filmmaking 101 stuff a little bit.
Yeah, there's rules.
And composition. But then, when a lot of what we viz in previz is like action scenes. So then it's like, well, what does a camera look like if it's attached to a helicopter, and like having the skills of looking up how fast a helicopter can, fly, and how fast can a helicopter fly in Los Angeles downtown, and how fast can a car drive safely on a film set. Those are the kinds of things that you end up learning on the job a little bit. But obviously, if you wanted to come in running, like those kind of filmmaking basics are really essential for visualization, because you're a cinematographer as well as a character animator, as well as a rendering artist. You have to wear all the different hats when you're a viz artist, and that's part of the fun of it, is that all those skills that you kind of picked up along the way, that instead of specializing, you get to like use them all.
Right. Yeah, and have a little bit more of an impact on the shot a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite gratifying to. I mean, I feel like that's kind of what viz artists, when they go watch a movie, they're always like, "Oh my gosh, my shot! It looks like what I did, and it's not different," or "Oh, they changed it. I can't really say it's my shot anymore."
Right. Yeah, I know that feeling. And on the just wrapping on the tools side of things, mentioning obviously Maya has been the mainstay of visual effects. There are any others that are acceptable? Say if somebody just knows 3ds Max or Blender or a different DCC, or is it?
I am seeing those more and more. From art departments, we're starting to see Blender files get passed over, whereas before it was like Maya or Rhino, or and we still get that stuff, but I'm just seeing more Blender than I have in the past. Blender is also like an open source free program, so easy to get your hands on to learn. We did a commercial actually recently where the directors were animating shots in Blender, and they're like, "Oh, something like this,"
cool.
And so it's definitely, I feel like people are using some of these free tools to really like kind of make that part of their own workflow, because they're easy to, entry is easy.
Right. And some of the like Blender, for example, has graduated from being a thing that couldn't do a lot of things to a point now where it can do most things.
Yeah.
Like, is it tricky in terms of sort of more established studio like Halon to have Blender be the thing that would you have to basically, okay, Blender, but now you have to learn Maya if you come here, if you just knew Blender, would you still be able to go work at Halon?
Yeah, I think so. And I think too that most people that come to Halon haven't used Unreal as well. And Unreal, I can't say anything for the Blender Maya transition, but most people pick up, kind of floundering, when they start in Unreal. But after about 2 weeks of taking their shots in there and stuff, uh, I feel like 2 weeks is kind of the time when people kind of stop asking the questions of how do I do this, how do I do that, and they're just doing shots in Unreal. And obviously, if you the more advanced techniques and stuff don't get picked up that fast, um, but yeah. So I think that Unreal experience is definitely useful, but also not it's not going to like bar your entry.
Right, it's not compulsory because they can pick it up
Mm-hmm.
fairly quickly. Somebody else in the audience is asking, it's Nikhil actually. Hey Nikhil, he's asking about he's curious about whether there's positions that exist at studios like Halon, or as you work at Halon, then Halon,
Mm-hmm.
whether there are positions that don't require Maya at all. Like, do you have people that maybe just know Unreal or other tools?
Yeah. Like I was saying with the Fortnite team, there are people who work almost exclusively in Maya doing like character animation, and there are people doing layout in Unreal that hardly ever touch Maya. There's lighters, that aren't touching Maya. I do think that a lot of that stuff will like eventually get picked up by visualization teams. Um, but because of the speed and the kind of craziness of visualization, we still rely on the things that make us the fastest. And at the moment, um, we're the fastest in Maya. But I think that eventually that could change.
What do you think about generalism? Is generalism something that do you think is on the rise? Is it like a requirement where you are? Is the specialist? What do you see the trends?
Yeah, I guess I'm a generalist, and I do feel like most of the people who kind of move from like previz artist to previz supervisor are generalists. And I think that especially now with the strikes and everything, kind of talking about diversifying yourself, I do think that being a generalist in the visualization field is a huge boon. Um, I can't say the same necessarily for VFX fields, but in the visualization field, you kind of have to wear all the hats. Like you get assigned a shot instead of a task. And so the shot is animate that camera, animate the characters, clean up some motion capture and adjust it so that the motion capture works with your shot. Uh, you know, like adjust some effects so that the explosion is big enough for your shot. Add some lights to get the lighting to work right. And then in Postviz, it's track that camera, composite that shot. Like you really are kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to visualization. There is specialization in that field. Like there's certainly people that are like better with animation than compositing, and so they kind of end up doing more of the tough animation shots. And then on our game side, it is organized a little bit more like an animation studio, so where they are a lot more specialized than we are over in Viz. But certainly with visualization, generalization is the way to go.
Right, that's good. Good to know. I'm seeing a trend, even a little bit into VFX, where generalism seems to be on the up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear that. Obviously, particularly for anybody who's starting out, but I feel like people who've been in it for a while also need to be expanding a little bit into the other things, not relying so much on a specialism. Another question here is, when you say visualization versus VFX, where do you draw the line between the two, and do you see the two drawing closer together or eventually merging?
Let's see. I think ultimately the line between the two seems like it's a little bit more about like schedule than anything else, because we're ultimately using a lot of the same programs, a lot of the same methods. Um, but for like for VFX, you do like a blocking animation pass to make sure it's like going in the right direction for a shot of a monster or something. And that is essentially previz, but for your shot. And you get notes on it, and it kind of gets further and further along. And with visualization, it kind of just stops at a certain point, and you don't refine it any further, because at that point you've handed it off to a VFX house. And I guess there are VFX houses that have their own visualization teams, and in those cases, the line is probably a lot more blurry. But I think the reason why visualization kind of exists is because it doesn't as easily translate into the VFX pipeline, I guess, because it's sometimes you're doing it right at the beginning, and you need to come up with visualize a scene of, let's say, like a monster destroying a city, but the monster that you're animating isn't actually the monster that's going to be in the movie. It's going to be like the art department's second or third try at a monster, and it's something that the director is like comfortable enough with seeing this scene play out with this kind of work in progress monster smashing the city, knowing that by the end of the movie, or like when the movie comes out, the monster that they really want is going to be in the movie. And you throw a lot of stuff away. You try out ideas. The director has ideas. You try it out, and they're like, "Oh, it's not as cool as I thought it would be." We'll try out ideas, pitch it to the director. They're like, "That's not as good as I want it to be," or whatever. And there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of collaboration, and there's a lot of being very non-precious with your work, because you're going to cut a lot of it out, and then just keep going, and keep trying out different ideas. And so they're kind of already merged, but they serve different purposes for the film production. Previz specifically is like pre-production. Postviz is kind of for editorial, and so that editorial can then turn over a sequence to the VFX house that says, "This is our edit. These are the shots we want VFX on." And so, yeah, they're already a little bit merged because they're using largely the same tools and the same workflows, but they serve different purposes. So it's hard to imagine them merging completely, except I suppose on movies maybe like Avatar, where it's like all one big thing, where the motion capture you do for previs is actually the motion capture you're going to see in the movie. So there are definitely instances where they're quite merged, and in the more previs gets kind of wrapped up into the virtual production aspect of it, of like sending things to the LED wall and stuff, it becomes pretty darn, the edge gets a lot grayer in those instances.
You find yourself doing turnovers with 3D a lot? Like, will people take things that you made in previs, even if they're in rough, and then plus them up? Or
That's actually a little bit of a mystery, because I've never worked at a VFX house that's taken previs from another company, but we certainly turn over all of our files in most cases to the VFX department. And so I'm always curious as to whether anybody opens those files or just looks at the video in the edit and says, "Oh, something like that." But there's definitely instances where you look at a shot that you've done and you're like, "Man, that feels so close to what I did that it feels like they must have opened my file." But I'm never know for sure.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to see where all this is going to go. Any things, like, other than obviously talking about AI and how its influence, like any other things on your radar? I know there's some interesting things emerging from the traditional VFX world in terms of real time, like we're seeing from Chaos Group with the Project Vantage or Project Arena, being able to do more real time ray tracing and using traditional tools. Any things that you're seeing that you like the look of that you think might affect your workflow?
Yeah, those things are very exciting. I think that we've adopted Unreal specifically, but there are a lot of other kind of these real time options that are coming up, and so seeing those is very interesting. I think that on every new project, you kind of get to look at what is new, and you get to say like, oh, should I try that out on this project? Is it going to slow me down too much to make it like super cool because I can try out this new thing? And I feel like those you kind of like are able to try out, but then especially on a long project, like if you're on a project for a year doing previz and then tech viz and postviz, a lot of times you're doing work on things that are at that point like a year old, and seeing like all these new processes that are out there, and you can't really fit them into your project now because they're like not compatible. But like, it's always exciting when you start a new project to be like, okay, what out there can I try to snag now?
Cool stuff. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience? Any places they can follow you? Anything that you're excited about? Anything as we kind of wrap up?
Well, I guess there's our website, halon.com. I think that we're rebuilding it to show off a lot of the new stuff that hasn't been posted on there for a long time. I guess our some of the movies that we've worked on just came out. So Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, we spent a little more than a year on. Atlas on Netflix, we spent, I think, almost a year and a half on. And then, the most recent Hunger Games movie, Argyle. Those are some of the more recent ones that have come out that we're excited about.
Awesome. Anything personally you want to share? Any places that you share your own art?
I don't really. I do art. I do a lot of it, and sometimes I post it, but it's usually just for friends and family and stuff. But maybe one day.
Right, I know how it goes. Busy
Yeah.
life in movie production. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Casey. It's been a real pleasure having you on today. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your experience and your wisdom with our audience.
Well, it was a pleasure being here and a fantastic conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks also to our audience. Thanks for coming in and sharing or asking, I should say, asking good questions. And we'll be back again in another couple of weeks with another podcast. You can obviously follow us at becomecgpro.com to find out more about the school. Or if you're not doing anything this evening and you'd like to come to our open day, then come check out the open day tonight. We posted some links to sign up for that. It's free. There's a free lesson in it. You can connect with our team and our instructors and recruiters and other people like you, other nerds who are into computer graphics. So if you're into that, come check out open day tonight. And thank you to everybody. Thanks to our team. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody.